Welcome on behalf of Fully Involved. I'm glad you're taking the time to watch our tutorial video on the version 14 releases. We're going to spend the next 15 or so minutes going through the approximately 30 or so items that were the changes that came out in version 14. To start with, we'll talk about the things that are on your main screen that have changed. To start with, the button bar that goes across the top has changed slightly. Messaging, of course, was always there. There used to be a button that said change PIN or password. That's now changed to the security button, and when you click on it, you get a drop down of 3 items: change your PIN, change password, or request a password. So that's just a slight change. The other thing that's changed is there was a system request button that used to be along the top bar. That's now been changed to the support button, and the support button again has a drop down of 2 items. One is to do the system request as you've always done, and the other one is a quick link to our support videos that exist on our website, such as the one that you're watching right now. The other thing that's changed is you'll see that the used to have a button that said log off, relog on, and shut down. Again, that's all been condensed into one button now that says sign out, again with 3 different choices depending on which one applies. The other thing that has been changed on your main screen, in version 13 we allowed you to start putting in images that you wanted on your own modules, as well as you could call your images whatever you may like. In version 14, the other thing that we've done now is we've allowed you to place those module buttons wherever you might place them. So how you do that is, if I go into my preferences and I go to my modules tab under general, you'll now see that there is a position field. So I can take, right now incident reporting was in the number 1 position. I'm going to put that in the number 12 position and put the dispatch console in the position 1, just so everyone can see how that works. So now when I come back out, you'll notice that now the dispatch console is in my upper left hand corner and my incident reporting is in my lower right hand corner. That's department specific. You set them however you want. However, once you set it, it is department wide, so it's not set per person, it's set based on the entire department. 2 more gadgets have been added. Everyone would remember from version 13 these 5 gadgets were added across the top. We've added 2 more gadgets. First one being what's called today's briefing, which is nothing but a quick link to be able to see, is there any pass-ons from today, and do you have any burning permits issued today. So it doesn't allow you to edit anything from there, it's just a quick view of what is going on. The other gadget that was added was staff expirations, and again that gives me quick reference to see who I might have that might have EMT license expirations dates, respiratory clearance, or driver's licenses. Again, I cannot edit it from here, but at least I can see what it is doing. Those gadgets are optional, however they should be there out of the gate. If we don't want them there, we go back to our preferences under the gadgets tab, and we can merely take away the daily briefing and the staff expirations, and we would not see them there anymore. In regards to attachments, we've allowed attachments of any type of file throughout our program since the inception. However, there was a number of modules that didn't allow them. In this version, you can now add attachments to nearly anything. That includes the contact module, permits, daily log, CADs, inspections, and other forms. The other thing that's been added that starts at the occupancy level is we've added in a suite field. And what that suite field allows you to do is to be able to take a building and break it down into multiple suites. So if you had a strip mall, for instance, you could conceivably create 3 property cards for one building and call them suites 1, 2, and 3. That starts right there at the occupancy level, and then it further pushes to the rest of your program. So once it starts there, it will now be available once you enter in an address for a multiple occupancy. If you were in permits, it would allow you to put the suite number in. If you were in a CAD slip or incident report, that suite field goes across to all of them. The other, before we get into actual modules, is one of the places we're just going to show you. What we've done is we've cleaned up what was called the training objective section, and the easiest way to get to that is that's under utility. You'll notice that we have training objective utility. We've cleaned it up to look much like our other screens where you have your status bar on the left. So if I go to, for instance, EVO3 for what they're calling their training course, now you can see all the objectives that are listed with it. And these pan across to your training record itself. If I want to do some work too and specific about it, I can see other items about it by clicking on the blue arrow. So that was a screen that's always existed as far as data collection goes. The screen has just been cleaned up to look much in line like the rest of the program. Along those same lines, if I go to preferences under the daily log section, and everyone might notice that these tabs now on the top may not look like your program. These tabs are now labeled as you label them. So for instance, RQN, in Goodens Mills, we use the purchase order module, but we call it requisitions. So because we've named it that in our module section, that RQN is what will show up on the tabs. So you can see that the NFIRS, it's correlating to whatever you're calling that module is what you're going to see it look like in your preferences. Back to my daily log, the one thing I wanted to show you was the daily log tasks, much like the training objectives, the screens have been cleaned up to look like. So on the left I have my days of the week, and I click on the day, and Goodens Mills, we don't use this for our daily stuff. However, I will just throw in a record so that you can see how it reacts. So test Monday 1, test Monday 2, and now if I go to Tuesday, there aren't any in there, but I click back to Monday and there's my tasks that would show up. Okay, just going to quickly get those back out of there. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a few minutes to talk about the changes that resulted in the incident reports. So I'm going to merely click over to an incident report, and there aren't a lot of changes, however there are a few. First thing we're going to talk about is the fact that you can now add multiple apparatus at once. So if I look at this incident report, for instance, you'll now note that I have an add apparatus button and I have an add multiple apparatus. Just as you add multiple people at once, you can add multiple apparatus. So if I click on the add apparatus button, I can say that Engine 84 and Ladder 82 responded on this, submit it, and you're going to see that it's just going to put those trucks on there, right on there for me. So that comes in handy, especially when you're doing mutual aid resources where you might have had a lot of apparatus respond and you don't have to keep clicking back and forth. So if I wanted to, I could say I was going to add in. Now the other thing I can do is at the top you see filter by department. So if I knew it was just Alfred that came to help me, I could just say Alfred came with an engine, an ambulance, and a forestry. I hit submit, and you're going to see that it put those 3 pieces of apparatus in there for me. So that's one of the changes. The second change that we're going to talk about is this import template. Much like you can use templates throughout the rest of the program, we can now do it for incident reporting, which is kind of slick for backfilling of information really fast. So what we'll do is we will create a new incident just for testing purposes, and I'm not going to add anybody to it, but I'm going to go right to my template, and I'm going to say that we went on an ATV accident up to MX207, which is just a regular call that we go on quite a bit. It's going to ask me, do I want to import the template? I'm going to say yes, and now you guys are going to kind of see it within a timely fashion that a lot of this incident report is going to be all filled out for me. Okay, so when I click back, you're going to see that it filled out not only the address, alarm type, the apparatus that should have went, mutual aid, and also when I go to my NFIRS page, you'll see that it already backfilled my incident type. It started to backfill my action taken, my classification, and a lot of my no equipment used type of things already get backfilled. So you get to decide, you set up that template however you might want it to fill out whatever information you might know is kind of a given. One of the other things that changed was we had a request that right now when you create an incident, or prior to version 14, it would always default to today's date. Some departments, the way they may be designed, that they may be filling out entering incident reports once a week for the past week. So there's a setting in the preference now that allows you to say whether or not you want it to always default to today's date. So again, I'm going to go to my NFIRS tab under default values, and you'll see that two more options have been added, is date of today and also the city. So if your department chooses so, you could say that you always wanted it to backfill your city name into the incident report, one less field you have to fill in. We've chosen not to do it here, but that is another option that does exist for you now. The other thing that's changed is you're going to notice that your search button now has changed a little. So if I hit search, I'm going to now get I'm going to back up onto another call real quick. If I hit search, you're going to see that I now have options. So I can say a basic search. Prior to, you always had a basic or advanced choice. Now you can say I want to see all the calls that were last week, for instance. And you're going to notice over here that comes back, good as bells, happened to be 10 calls last week. Or I could say, show me all the calls that are incomplete. And for right now, we're lucky that it's just this one that we've just completed. So you've got those search options that can be used. That concludes the incident report changes. The next module we'll go on to is merely the CAD one, which had very limited number of changes. However, the big change for them was the fact that they can add the multiple apparatus to the CAD slip, just as I already showed you on the incident report you could do. So they can the CAD slip can do it the same way. The next module we'll go through is what's called the training and activities typically. There's a couple changes there. The biggest one being that you're going to notice on the left now you'll see all of your data that already exists. So it gives you the allowable to see quick reference to pan back through the other records without having to search on them. So if I wanted to go to this one, I just click on that ladder 82 and you'll see that it was a driver operator training that day. Or I might want to flip down to this company officer meeting one. So it allows you to always see all the records. You'll notice that the text format, and you get the green check boxes based on when it's QA approved. So you can see at a moment's notice what's been QA approved and what hasn't. The other thing that's been changed in here is, much like in the incident reports, if you click on the search, you can say, show me any training reports that are incomplete. You can also say, show me any training reports from the same thing. this week or last week. The other component that's changed is if I go into a basic and I click down, now you'll see that I do have the drop downs, which typically prior to would never have existed in a search mode. So although I have to have them, I have to look at them all, I can see every one that's in here, okay, that you might have used somewhere along the way. You'll see the codes that exist. So and I think we're going to find that that is the last item that changed for trainings and activities. Other than, no, we do have two more items that changed. One of the items was just a little bit of a cleanup. Is this instructor field would in the past it blended in with the name and the date. We've obviously made that so it stands out a little more. And the other thing that has changed is the way that the hierarchy of these numbering system works. Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. In past versions, the only thing that really mattered at the end was the Tier 3 number. That's what it was based on. You couldn't duplicate that number anyways. What we've done now is we've changed the system so that essentially when it's trying to correlate what class you went to, it is correlating all three tiers. So the plus side to that is you can use any numbering scheme you want, and you can also duplicate numbers. So if under training you could have a 1212, and you could also have a 1212 under certification. So there's nothing that prevents you from duplicating those numbers anymore. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about, we're going to take a few minutes and talk about the staff module. The staff module, it's only a couple items, some of them pretty small actually, but right out of the gate you're going to notice, just like your training, just like your POs, just like your streets, you now have that status bar so that you can quickly click from one person to another back and forth. So if I click on Chad, you'll see Chad's staff card comes up. I can go right back to Charles Wilson. The other thing that's changed is in the history tab, this filter, the history has been, of course, always been there. So you'll see this one, there is two history records. If I was filtering that and it brought it back to just one, and now I go to create one, anytime it sees something in the filter, it's going to assume that you're trying to create that. And the rationale behind that one was if it didn't do that, the minute you created it, you wouldn't see it there. So what we've done is we've told it to assume that the rank, the category, is based on the filter if it exists. Much like the incident and trainings, now when you click on the search button, you have a number of things you can search on. You can say, bring me back anybody who has an EMT license expiring within the next year, and you'll see that for this example, there's 7 of them. So you have the ability to still do basic searches, but you've also got a number of other choices that you can pull back. The field default pay has always existed, but yet it never displayed. You just had to look down here to see which one was defaulted. For our sake, we've just made it easier so that you can confirm that you're defaulting the right one. If I undefaulted that and I defaulted the other one, you'll notice that default now changes to 30 instead of 20. Okay. And that is the end of what changed in the staff module. Pretty slick, pretty small. Inventory. Much like the other modules, we've completed it where you now have the status bar down the left, so that if I go into my apparatus, as I'm doing right now, into my fleet module, you'll notice that there's all my existing fleet that is based on the category, and it's in service. If I flipped over to a decommissioned vehicle, you'll notice that I'm going to see all the decommissioned vehicles there alongside me. So I'll put this one back in service. So not only do I see it, and I can quickly bounce between trucks to see whatever it is I need to see, you'll also notice that I have 5 new work orders on Engine 81, 1 open one, as real quick I can see those numbers, so it makes some quick reference stuff for you. Loose equipment, much like the staff history that we just talked about, if you create a new piece of loose equipment here and you're using that filter, it's going to assume that's where you want to put it. So if I push the plus sign right now, it's assuming that I'm putting it in this 07 officer side exterior. And you'll notice, and there it is right there, there's my record. Okay. The other thing that's been added is there's now a tie between, if you take the time to generate purchase orders based on a work order, it will now also tie back to the unit. So if I go to, you'll notice there's a tab here now called requisitions. That's because that's what we call the module in Goodham's Mills. If you call it POs in your department, that's what it'll say there. It'll say POs. And if you click over to it, you can now see all of the POs that have been assigned to that unit. You also have the ability to filter it based on fiscal year. So right out of the gate, I can look and see that I spent $721 on POs on Engine 81 versus last year I spent $3,619. So it gives you quick reference to be able to see items as far as in relationship to the purchase orders. That is the end of the inventory section. The next one we're going to talk about is the occupancy section, which has a few more changes that will you'll notice right out of the gate. The first thing you're going to notice is there used to be a series of tabs, I believe that was in the area of 35 tabs. It was way too busy and had too many tabs. So what we've done now is we've broken it down to 5 different tabs. The first one is called Property Info. Sub to that, you have 6 or so items. So if I choose my building, this is the same screen that everyone remembers seeing. If I go to Protection Systems, I see the Protection Systems, Utilities, so on and so forth, whatever it might be about this. If I go to my Records tab, I then have a series of, I can see my inspections, I can see my violations, I can see the contacts, so on and so forth. If I go to the response, I can see flags, hydrants, run cards, so on and so forth. The remarks field doesn't have any subs, and then the special studies field does not have any subs. The other thing that's been added is you'll notice now there's a hard-coded field for a phone number or an email address. So it allows you to capture that information in regards to it. That ends the occupancy card. One of the last ones we're going to talk about is the burning permits. Couple things on permits. One is there's been an email address field added. This phone number and this email address will now pull from the occupancy card on the fields that we just talked about. The other thing it will do is it will ask you when you're entering a permit if you want to add that phone number. So if someone comes in to get a permit, you take their phone number, it'll ask you, do you want to update their occupancy card? If you so choose to, the next time they come back, that phone number will backfill for you. That ends our permit section, and the last thing that we need to talk about is in the purchase orders, for what most people call it. The only thing I want to show you is real quick, that also on the left has your status bar has been added so that you can see which ones have been QA'd, what the status of it. And the other thing you can do is, just like in a lot of places, you can hover over it and you can get a quick idea of what all of these little POs are for, and then of course by clicking on it I can take me right over to that PO to see where that was going. That concludes our version 14 updates. We appreciate you taking the time to watch our videos, and we look forward to seeing you again.